They tell you history was written by kings, that peasants lived nameless, faceless lives, born to toil, destined to obey. But the truth is sharper than that, because when the harvest failed, when the swords grew hungry, or when the taxes pushed too far, it wasn't kings who held power. It was the many. It was the people. The backbone beneath the crown. Peasants weren't just bodies in the field. They were the foundation of the entire medieval world. Every meal on a noble's plate, every coin in the Lord's chest, every soldier on that march. All of it began with the work of the peasantry. They managed land, raised livestock, harvested grain, brewed ale, spun wool, and mended tools. Without them, the manor stopped, the market empty, the kingdom cracked. And they weren't passive. Village councils settled disputes, elders preserved memory and law, whole communities rose to defend forests, grazing rights, and local custom from encroaching nobles. The myth of helpless peasants fall apart when you look closely. These were people who knew how to endure, how to adapt, and how to protect what little they had. And sometimes that was enough to shake the crown. Rebellion wasn't rare, it was rhythmic. History loves to talk about knights and banners, but it flinches at the word revolt. And yet, across Europe, peasant uprisings weren't rare, they were regular. From the English peasant revolt of 1381 to the German peasant war of 1524, entire regions burned not because of war between kings, but because of pressure from below. Crushing taxes, forced labor, arbitrary punishment. These weren't just burdens, they were the spark. And peasants didn't just burn fields and scatter. They organized, they set demands, they formed militias, they quoted scripture, appealed to ancient rites, and fought under banners bearing hammers, sickles, or even empty boots. The message was clear. They weren't just subjects, they were stakeholders. And when rulers forgot that, they paid the price in fire and blood. Even those tasked with enforcing the king's law, the knights, the guards, the sheriffs, had to reckon with the people. Their presence wasn't always welcome, and their armor wasn't always protection. Because when a village decided it had enough, not even iron could guarantee obedience. That's why symbols matter. Not just banners and crests, but what you carried in your hand and drank from by the fire. They reminded everyone, yourself included, who you served and why. Take the Armor Kingdom King's Guard Knight Helmet mug. It models after the heavy helm worn by royal guards, not to intimidate, but to represent unwavering duty. Its faceplate, bolted tight like a vow, evokes a kind of loyalty expected not just from warriors, but from anyone who held the line. It doesn't whisper luxury. It stands for discipline, vigilance, and the quiet understanding that authority isn't worn, it's earned. Lords could fall, but harvests couldn't. When a king died, a lord was toppled, or war broke out. It was the peasants who stayed. The castle might change hands, but the soil didn't. The fields needed planting, the grain still needed milling, and that kind of permanence was power. In many regions, peasants negotiated rent. Some bought their freedom. Others formed collectives. The most successful lords were the ones who understood that ruling meant managing, not dominating. Because a burnt-out village was worth nothing. A starved field yielded no taxes. An angry village could poison wells, hide weapons, or worse, side with your rival. In this way, power became a quiet tug of war. The peasants didn't wear a crown, but they decided whether it stayed on your head. History books seldom name them, but the village midwife saved many more lives than night. The farmer's protest fed more mouths than any royal decree. The blacksmith's silence during rebellion often spoke louder than banners. Peasant power wasn't theatrical, it was enduring. It lived in generational knowledge, in knowing when to bend and when to dig in. It lived in the small defiance of lighting a forbidden fire or gathering in secret under moonlight. It lived in the unspoken agreement between families to protect one another when no one else would. It still echoes in every challenge to unjust authority, in every quiet act of resilience passed from hand to hand like a tool or a torch. The crown sat high, but the land ran deep. And deep in the mud and the frost and the grain, power took root. Quiet, patient, and always watching. The kings ruled in theory, but the peasants ruled in consequence.